morning, everyone. Welcome to the Nature Positive Pavilion. This morning's events, we're going to talk about advancing Indigenous protected and conserved areas on the lands and oceans. And to open the session before we get going, as is appropriate, we will have opening from Patty. Thank you, Patty.
Kwe, Nil Deliwis, Patricia Solis, Nujeao Nagutguk. My name is Patricia Solis. I'm from Tobic First Nation, which is in New Brunswick, Canada. And I'm very honored to be doing the opening here with you today and really looking forward to a great conversation. Typically, when I open a session, we share a song that comes from our territory, and the song that I'm going to sing is actually an honor song that my cousin created before she passed, Gwen Bear. And it is a song about our river and how connected to the river we are. Wolastoq b'malagwe, ajire b'migu, Wolastoq b'malagwe, zupegel miya. Nigwas b'mipin, wazizich nilaskamil, nigwas b'mipin, wazizich nilaskamil. Wolastoq b'malagwe, ajire b'migu, Wolastoq b'malagwe, zupegel miya. Nigwas b'mipin, wazizich nilaskamil, nigwas b'mipin, wazizich nilaskamil. Waliwan giziolinig, waliwan mosum sinuk, waliwan nokmis sinuk, waliwan wayasizik, waliwan wazizik, waliwan skidabik, waliwan apijik, waliwan to everyone that is here with us today, asking our grandmothers and our grandfathers to come and sit with us while we talk about this important and serious matter. We know we need to be speaking for all our relations, all our relatives, and I hope that their grandmothers and grandfathers come to sit with us as well. Waliwan.
Hi, Patty. Thank you for opening this session. I now welcome you all again to the Nature Positive Pavilion and this session, Advancing Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas on Lands and Oceans. Welcome also to Montreal, the territory of the Haudenosaunee people. We're appreciative of being here. And also thanks to the host, the Assembly of First Nations, the Coastal First Nations, Great Bear Initiative, Seal River Watershed Alliance, Maliseet Nation Conservation Council, Dene First Nation, Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society. Thank you very much. I'm moderating this panel because I too work on Indigenous-led conservation in British Columbia, and I'm so excited to hear about the other wonderful examples that are leading our nation in Indigenous-led conservation throughout this large turtle island. And so I appreciate that, and now we'll go into the introductions of each of the panelists. So we have here Matthew Munson. Matthew is a Dene First Nation band member, former Dene First Nations Lands Department Director, and currently a technical consultant with over 12 years of experience in geographic and information management systems to inform community, government, and industry processes for planning, consultation, and traditional use study projects. at some of the many varied and diverse intersections where Western science and Indigenous knowledge coalesce and combine is where Matt likes to be. But when not working, he can also be found at the local outdoor rink practicing for the day when beer league rec hockey resumes once again. Thanks. Okay, great. And then we have Stephanie Tharasi, land advocate and executive director of the Seal River Watershed Initiative, an initiative led by the CAC Dene First Nation to protect the entirety of the Seal River watershed for our future generations in partnership with their Cree, Dene, and Inuit neighbors. Patty you've heard from, but she's also the executive director of the Maliseet Nation Conservation Council and a member of the Maliseet tribe of Indigenous people whose lands lie along the St. John River watershed on both sides of the US and Canadian border in northeast Maine and southern New Brunswick. Patty is an experienced tribal policy administrator, environmentalist, and educational planner, and has a very extensive background working in tribal organizations on matters of social well-being, education, and environmental sustainability. At the end, we have Wan Lee, is that correct? A senior policy analyst on the water sector for the Assembly of First Nations. With a background in fisheries and fisheries management, they bring over a decade of experience working on resource management policy with First Nations. So this is a wonderful panel, and we're really excited to hear and augment our own understanding of all of the options for Indigenous-led conservation here in Canada. So we'll have about 5 minutes of opening remarks from each of the panelists, and then we'll get into a moderated discussion with some questions, both from me, the moderator, and as well, if there's time, from the audience. So appreciate that, Matthew.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. I would just like to acknowledge the opening song and prayer is beautiful. And I wanted to also thank the organizers of this event, also COP15. Really is an honor and a privilege to be here. We travel far and from places that this is a little bit foreign and exciting, but the message that we're here to bring to you is one of hope. And I really, words, pictures speak 1,000 words, and videos are worth 1,000 pictures. So we do have a video that we would like to share with you. If we could please cue that now. Thanks. Bistcho Lake is unique. This spot is one of the last remaining relatively intact places in our traditional territory.
We see the Bistcho caribou herd as the herd of hope that actually has a chance if there was habitat protections and some management like what the Dene want to do.
All the rivers and creeks that flows into Bistcho Lake needs to be a protected area.
In order to keep this place the way it is now, we're going to need to be able to do things differently here than we have done elsewhere.
I think it's really important that this area is protected, and I think it's important that that's with the Dene First Nation and their leadership that they've shown there, that they have been stewards for this area for generations, and they continue to be. Especially, you can see that through all of their community monitoring programs and through all of this work that they've been doing to come up with a management plan and an Indigenous protected area proposal.
Well, we're in these twin crises of climate and biodiversity loss. And in order for us to turn the tide on those two things, we need to be conserving the areas that have the high soil carbon and our areas that are important for biodiversity. And Bistcho Lake is a big one for that. And it's one of the most important areas in all of Alberta for that.
It's a landscape where there's still a lot of biodiversity, and we need to be able to keep it that way. Thank you. Oh. Thanks. Must see. So my Dene name is Yves Claus Dizina, and working with my community and my leadership has just been such an honor. This year we were able to, the video you just saw was from our trip this September, and we were able to invite our traditional drummers with us. And so having traditional music and prayer in our special place is just, was so amazing. So I wanted to just mention how the conservation of biodiversity, protecting habitats for critical and endangered species, having Indigenous-led conservation and protection in an area that is really, one of our birthplaces. This is an area that where we come from, and without Bistcho Lake, there really is no Dene that. Some of the things we've been doing with our allies and partners, I want to specifically mention Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, Northern Alberta chapter, and the entire CPAWS group. There are other NGOs that we'd like to thank, Alberta Wilderness Association, at the University of Alberta, and there's many others. I couldn't list them all with the time we have here. Generally, though, that Bistcho Lake is already a protected and conserved area. It always has been, and it still is now. So some of the things that we're doing is we've developed a Guardian of the Territory program. And so a lot of people talk about Indigenous guardians. Ours is generally guardians, because we want to be really inclusive. Everyone can be a guardian that values that landscape. We've been working with traditional knowledge holders from the beginning and throughout, really without their guidance on how we, for example, develop our scientific caribou program, what we look for when we're doing water quality monitoring, and we're doing other things like making sure that the rules and regulations that exist are being adhered to, so there's no poaching going on, etc. And we're really excited with what we see in the future as delineating an area that is inclusive of the watershed that flows into the lake, and really making sure that in this world we still have places that are intact, beautiful, healthy, vibrant. So often we hear in the news daily, if you turn on the TV, you open the newspaper, you look at social media, this crisis of biodiversity, this crisis of climate change. At Bistcho Lake, it is a place of hope. It's home, not just for us, but for many species at risk, caribou, the amount of beauty that is there, and is one of those places that continues to be, and we need that to shine, not just for the lake, but I think everybody as humans on this planet needs to know that that there is still hope. There are places left. There are things we can do. There are things that we are doing that are going to make this positive change. And so when we have places like Bistcho Lake that anyone can go to and have this amazing awakening of spirit, of relearning, rediscovering, where we came from. This is what Bistcho Lake is all about, and we certainly have formal proposals and working with government, other nations, academia, industry, and local stakeholders on this. But really, we believe this is a unique and global opportunity here to do some really effective conservation. But also, just given that the lake itself is on a plateau, it's very unique geography there, that this is a really great place to use as a baseline to study. To it is more naturally resilient, just where it is and how it's situated. So yeah, we're really hopeful that we will not just speak to the minds of people, but also hopefully in some way enter into their hearts and stir people to do something, to call your politician, write a letter, come visit us. Like I said, our guardians are not just Indigenous guardians, but guardians of the territory. And our territory is not exclusive to anyone. So I just wanted to end with that, and I really appreciate all of you and the chance to speak here. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi. Stephanie?
Hello, what's there? Stephanie Thrassi, Hushe, Eglanet. How are you all today, this morning? It's nice to be here. My name is Stephanie Thrassi. I am Saisi Dene First Nation from Tuduli Lake, Manitoba. In the northern part of Manitoba, it's the most north that you can go in the province, is where I call home. It is without roads. It is without industry. My parents didn't receive running water until 2007. When I was brought there, they brought me home on a float plane. Our first home was a log cabin. It was probably 10 feet by 10 feet, and we had a 45-barrel stove as our heat and a twin bed, 2 plates, 2 bowls, 2 sets of cutlery. And that was my first home. I remember before there was street lights or telephones. I played outside all day, every day, and I went fishing any time that I could. I lived out on the land with my grandparents, and I'm here to talk a little bit about this space today. If you can play my video, that would be wonderful.
Our government affirms its commitment to working with Indigenous peoples. We are here to focus on respect, reconciliation, and repairing broken relationships.
We have a gift for the province. There is an amazing opportunity to work together with Indigenous people to help us set up an Indigenous protected area in northern Manitoba. The Seal River Watershed is a pristine place that is the same as it's been for hundreds of years. It encompasses 50,000 square kilometers. That's the size of Nova Scotia. We have the overwhelming support of 4 First Nations in the province to protect the Seal River Watershed. We have polled Manitobans, and 83% of them support the work we are doing as well. So if we leave the watershed as it is and protect it as it's in its natural state, it saves that space for the caribou. It saves that space for the polar bears to come through. A safe place to practice our cultures and to speak our languages. And it also saves the space for the rest of Canada. There are not a lot of spaces in the world that are the same as they have been since time immemorial, especially in our own backyard. We know there's tourism in Manitoba. We know that there's very successful tourism in northern Manitoba, but we really do believe that that is just the tip of the iceberg. Would love to be able to say to our youth and our young people that you can create a future for yourself with ecotourism, with cultural tourism. It would be an opportunity and a way for us to create careers and livelihoods for ourselves, but also to celebrate and share what we've always known that was special with others from around the world. When the visitors come to experience the watershed in its pristine state, they will see that Manitoba is serious about working with Indigenous people and working on reconciliation. So with that, I think that our project really is an incredible step towards self-determination, towards sustainability, towards hopeful long-term commitments with our friends and allies and partners, collaborations. You know, there's so many ways for us to share this with others and to celebrate that this place that we call home is 99.97% pristine. It's a fully intact watershed that is the size of Nova Scotia, and this is in our backyard. This is so close to all of us if we just wanted to make a little trip to see our place we call home. This summer we were able to take 18 members from the 4 communities I work with elders and youth on a 7-day canoe trip. We paddled to the very end of the Chitani Lake. We had to paddle through rapids. We were really working on this two-eyed seeing approach where we brought Paddle Canada with us to teach our young people the tools they need to get their certification in whitewater paddling so that we can someday bring our friends down this river. And it really, you know, was such a powerful experience. We were gathering up and we were getting ready to leave. And before this, the whole week while we were doing training in the community, and it was gray skies, it was so dark, it was cold, it was storming, but we were still out there doing this training at the water. And the night before we left, there was an incredible storm, like a lightning storm for the books. We were all just like so stressed out and wondering like, what's gonna happen? Are we gonna be able to leave tomorrow? We were so like worked up. And I just was like, hey, I gotta stop stressing about it. I'm gonna go to sleep. There's so much I got to do in the morning. I'm just gonna like leave the window open a little bit so I can hear it, right? And like instantly I just fell asleep, and I woke up in the morning and I opened the curtains and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was so blue, and I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. So we're down at the back beach and we're getting ready. We're loading boats, and everybody is coming up to us from the community. They're giving us hugs. We're praying for good weather. We're praying for good weather. Because at the end of August, you never know what you're going to get out there. It could be really, really harsh. So we had blue skies and we were getting ready to leave. Everybody was wishing us well, wishing us good weather. They're praying for good weather. And then there was this frenzy. People were like, you guys have to go to the front beach. Go to the front beach. And we're like, but we're going to leave. That's going to be an extra little bit. We have to paddle. We already have to paddle 5 hours across an open lake before we even get to any kind of river. And they're like, you have to go to the front beach. So we were like, okay, we're going to go to the front beach. So we're paddling around, and we come around the last corner to get to the front of the community, and a bald eagle flies over us. So like stereotypical, and you're like, yeah, right? But it actually happened. And we go around the corner, this bald eagle flies over us, he tips his wings, and we come around the corner and we see like half of the community is standing on the beach. There's all these vehicles and trucks and quads and everything, and we're like, oh my God, you know, we're just like so excited and we're so happy. We paddle up, and there's drummers there, and they were singing for us, right? They sang for us, and we lifted our paddles, we bid everybody farewell. We knew we had a long paddle ahead of us. And so we go to turn around, and we paddled across this big lake, and they didn't stop singing for us. They didn't stop drumming for us. And I was kind of laughing, and I was like, and we were all in great spirits. And then I asked the Paddle Canada people, have you guys ever had a send-off like that before, right? And they looked at me with the most serious face, and they were almost emotional. They said, I've never experienced that in my life. And I kind of felt shocked, because I felt like, but this is normal. This is normal for us. Anytime we go out on the land, our people are there supporting us and giving us that strength to endure whatever the land brings us. And I thought, how sad that there's people out there in the world who don't get to experience this kind of culture and this kind of connection. And I felt really sad for them and for other people. So we let them know, okay, this is what it's like. This is our home. This is what our people do for each other when we're connected to the land. So we we had our trip. It was an incredible experience. There were seals in fresh water. There were probably 15 eagles. We were drinking water out of the sides of the canoe as we were traveling down the river. And it was plus 30 degrees every single day we were on this trip. And on our last day coming back, there was a storm circling on this side of us and one on this side, but the rain never touched our paddlers and our people. And I wanted to share that feeling and that power of the hope that we have in our communities for this kind of work that we do. When we're connected to the land, we really do feel like we can do anything. And there is this place that exists that is still the same as it's been since my great-great-great-great-grandparents used to be nomadic and follow the caribou herds. And it's so important that we continue this work to protect it and really try to celebrate that with everybody. Masicho.
Thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that story of beauty. It's inspirational. Thank you. Patty?
Well, Ewan, it's an incredible honor to be on stage with my fellow panelists, especially our young people who are such a source of hope for us, and truly we need that. I think everybody needs that. And you know, the work that we do back east definitely represents a continuum in this work around Indigenous-led conservation, because basically we've been dispossessed, displaced off of our lands, away from our waters for hundreds of years. And so many of our relatives, so many of what you call species are in peril where I come from. We really struggle to even be able to say the word pristine about anything, because everything has been so touched, so exploited, so overused, cumulative impacts. It's devastating, it's heartbreaking, and to hear messages of hope from fellow nations, from our fellow peoples in other areas across Turtle Island, it's really important for us as Indigenous people to be able to share this, because so often when we turn on the news, it's not good news. It's not good news for our relatives. It's not good news, especially for our women, and it's not good news for so many of our people. And that kind of erasure, that kind of invisibility only from our devastation, that needs to change. And I'm so glad these young people are here with that message of change, because for me, this is beyond powerful. This is medicine. This is medicine that is coming from our people, from the land, from the connection to our water. This is exactly why we do the work that we do out east. And we do it collectively. You know, the Wolastoq, the Maliseet, we work with our Mi'kmaq and Beskamagati, Passamaquoddy brothers and sisters on this Indigenous-led conservation work. And to say it's challenging, that the challenge fund that was set out through Pathway 1 in Canada is challenging is an absolute understatement, because of the fact that, you know, Crown governments want to continue to work in very colonialistic fashion. And they want to keep, it seems, working as if this is status quo. This is business as usual. And I know I was so moved by the words of the UN Secretary General yesterday in associating words like biodiversity apocalypse to what we are actually experiencing. And it's also an honor for myself and our communities to be working with the Assembly of First Nations on this, especially in regards to our marine IPCA Indigenous-led conservation work. Because for us, as I say, it's been hundreds of years since we've been dispossessed of our ability to be in the marine setting, to be on the coast. We were literally driven into communities, onto reserves, and put in a system that we had to have passes to leave our communities, to even go get firewood or a fish from the river. I mean, and my goodness, talking about our fish, talking about our salmon, you know, my clothing today is imbued with that because I need the strength of the salmon. I need the medicine of the salmon. And our salmon is on the brink of extirpation because of hydrodevelopment, because of overdevelopment of our river for the last 50 years. It has completely killed our connection to our salmon. And yet we are fighting. We are fighting so hard through this Indigenous-led conservation work to impress on both Canadian and US governments that we need to be able to be at least involved, to at least have a voice. You know, us speaking here today, some years ago, wouldn't have even been allowed. It was illegal for us to have a voice in this world. So this is a step. Whether people see it or not, this is a step. You know, and I have a heartfelt thanks for Juan Lee for asking me to come. This represents so much for all of our people. Woliwin.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Patty, for giving voice to some of the vision that Stephanie shared and Matthew shared. Juan Lee?
Thank you, everybody. I'll start off with a couple thank yous and then a couple disclaimers. Thank you, Woliwin, to Patty. Really grateful for that song, starting us off in a good way. And thank you to Tarudaho Hill that welcomed us to Kanien'kehá:ka territory yesterday evening. I'm very grateful to be here on Kahnawake lands. So I'm getting a bit of feedback. Should I be turning my head in a different direction? All right. Couple disclaimers. I do not speak on behalf of the Canadian delegation, although I am on the Canadian delegation, so just noting that. I've been told to say that, so here we go. My other disclaimer is that I do not have a story like all of these folks have. Really appreciative of videos that you folks have shared. I do come into this work as a settler and very grateful for the opportunities that I've been provided to uplift the voices of First Nations and advocate for their rights, especially in Indigenous-led conservation. The Assembly of First Nations supports and elevates the rights of First Nations, particularly around self-determination as the basis and foundation of all the work that we do. So coming into the work of Indigenous-led conservation, that's really the push that drives us to do the work that we did today. The AFN has also been involved in Indigenous-led conservation work, starting from the Indigenous Circle of Experts Pathway to Canada 1, Target 1 report that Patty was just mentioning. So lots of work happening on the terrestrial front with Environment of Climate Change Canada. Great work that has been done on lands, and the emphasis that we've had is that, noting that the ICE process, the Indigenous Circle of Experts, which honestly is the coolest acronym that's ever been crafted. See what I did there? Yeah, and the ICE process really recognized that lands and waters are not separate. So I'm very happy to hear the theme of water really flowing throughout all of your presentations today. The water sector at the AFN focuses on water stewardship and supporting First Nations in stewarding their watersheds and environments, including marine environments, marine coastal waters. So a lot of the work that I do coming into this, my focus is on, like what Patty was saying, Indigenous protected and conserved areas in the marine environment. And one of the things that we've been working on is trying to advance that concept in the marine and coastal waters, noting that lots of work has been done in the terrestrial environment, but there's still a gap to be closed on the marine front. The last thing that I'll say, and I'll be brief, is the AFN has produced a position paper coming into COP, and I'd like to share that with you, perhaps through a link, maybe later. But some of the key positions that the AFN is bringing to COP include, uplifting First Nations-led conservation at COP, and really ensuring that that is a theme that runs through subnational, national, and international biodiversity policy. Secondly, elevating the rights, governance, and knowledge systems of Indigenous peoples through a rights-based post-2020 framework. And then third, just really requesting and pushing for the full and effective participation of Indigenous peoples throughout all areas of the CBD. So I'll leave you with that, but obviously my focus has been on policy, but also just trying to elevate those voices that we so need to hear today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your stories, sharing the vision, giving voice to the vision and the challenges, and connecting, right? I think that's really important. And so there's, in speaking for your nation, Stephanie, and speaking for the sort of collective vision of Indigenous nations across Canada, across Manitoba, across Turtle Island, how do you share that vision that you have with the other nations? Like, we know you're bringing this here, but there's so much need for us to share those stories, to generate that collective empowerment, that collective voice that Patty was talking about. How is your work doing that in your initiative?
I think that your question, there's so many levels there of ways that we could talk about this. When I think about other projects going through some of the things that we've gone through, I really think it's important that I heard this thing at another function I was just at yesterday, but I've heard it from them for a while, is that, we're trying to practice this idea of we rise together. I think it's so powerful and so important to think about that, and that, we are communicating with our friends and we are sharing those stories and visions and issues and failures together so that we can learn from each other. I think that that's so important, and not wanting to be competitive and competing. And I'm not against any other projects. We're not trying to do this for ourselves, because there's this feeling that we're all kind of in this together, and that's really important to think about, and to think about things that we've done and how to share that with our friends and our family. I think that that's so important. So far, our project, we've been working for about 3 years, and right now it's like a train. It's just moving forward regardless of what we're doing in the communities. There's funding reports we have to do, there's work plans that have to be built, that have to be followed, there's multiple funding streams that we're taking care of at the same time, and there is so much high level work that we have to do to have that trickle down into the communities. And that's so, you probably need a PhD to be able to understand all of that high level funding stuff that's happening, that has to happen regardless of what's happening in the communities, regardless of losses happening in the communities, regardless of like planes not arriving and bringing equipment for our intermediate first aid training that we're having, you know. So it's about sharing what that has been like, and learning from other friends who are going through the same thing and how they deal with that, you know, because we want success. We want to be able to do this. And hearing her talk about the colonial processes that we have to go through, you know, we're constantly forcing ourselves to be a bridge between our circular communities and the way that we work and this square cookie cutter box that we have to fit into. And we're constantly trying to be this bridge between the two worlds and trying to make it work in these funding proposals or these projects that are all about, you know, establishment, creating these protected areas, the environment, the 23 species at risk. But what about the people that we have to think about? What about the human side of this big puzzle? Because if we just think about the spaces, there's going to be a huge gap in the middle where we haven't supported the people and the communities, right? The youth. So I think that it's so important to really try to shift our focus to the people and the people in the communities and our friends going through the same thing, and sharing those successes and sharing those struggles so that we can try to get over that colonial step that we have to get up on top of to be able to master that and still think about our lands and the waters and the animals and our cultures and languages that we're struggling so hard to keep. And I think that, you know, it's really important that we start to shift and focus on that part of the work we're doing as well.
Well said, thank you. And following up with Stephanie's comment about being a bridge and really beginning to develop those partnerships and that interrelation between the circle, your community perspectives, and the square box, can you provide some examples or lessons from your relationships with other governments that would help us?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so just, I don't know, a bit kind of two-part question a little bit. The first one is relationships between you know, the community members and you know, even kind of informing traditional knowledge into, you know, scientific methods is something that has just been, you know, there are so many new properties that emerge in, you know, viewing information from not necessarily differing perspectives. There's not this dichotomy between, you know, science and traditions necessarily, but you know, looking at you know, the same land, the same, you know, subject, you know, just in different ways. And so you know, it's not an additive you know, knowledge that you're not adding, you know, it's not additive, it's more kind of a geometric expansion where things that might not have been known, you know, in one or the other are, you know, now available when you, I don't want to say combine both, but, you know, use both to visions to inform. As far as Crown governments go, so in our area, we are a Treaty 8 signatory, and so our treaties are with the Crown, and so, you know, for example, our treaty was signed in 1899. We signed an adhesion in 1900. In fact, we believe that we were going to be negotiating our own agreement and not just adding our name to an existing one. So there's a little bit of historic, some things may need to be re-looked at in that sense. But, the treaty relationship with the Crown extends to government, and how that seems to be, happening these days is really increasingly, separation and divisiveness with, between territorial and provincial governments and federal governments. To us, that the Crown we didn't sign with one or the other. We signed with all following governments out of that Crown relationship. And so when we're asking about conservation and protecting really one of the last, if not the last, very intact areas in our traditional territory, we're not asking government to do anything new. We're not saying, here, please do this designation for us. And all we're asking is that Crown governments honor the promises that they've already made 122 years ago. They promised that the settlers would be allowed to come in to share the land with us, and they could take up lands for lumbering, agriculture, now oil and gas, but also that the treaty peoples, the First Nation peoples, would also be allowed to exist as if the treaty had not ever been signed. And the rights to hunt, trap, fish, and incidental activities that support those are also protected forever. And so, the relationship between conservation and protection of one of the last remaining intact areas that is critical for our treaty rights. Really, we're just asking Crown governments to honor the promises that they've already made.
And what are the answers they're giving?
There's been quite a bit of resistance. In fact, there was a recent regional land use planning, sub-regional planning process that occurred in the Bistcho. It's called the Bistcho sub-region. And our proposals, very detailed, very inclusive, proactive, and we shared those with government as they were drafting the sub-regional plan. And to our dismay and almost bitter disappointment, not even a mention of the proposal in the sub-regional plan. And so certainly, on the provincial side at least, there has been no recognition, much less dialogue on this. And so we're really hoping that as we move forward with developing our co-management or cooperative management plan. We do have a management plan that we're developing for the Indigenous protected and conserved area, or the watershed of the lake. That we're going to be able to really work with Crown governments to establish, to recognize, implement our co-management plan. Hopefully they'll come around and want to work on it with us. But in the meantime, like I said, we're not waiting for anyone. We're doing this now. We're measuring cumulative effects. We're doing research and traditional knowledge-informed scientific studies of endangered caribou, for example. We don't need permission, but we're doing these things, and I think the sooner that these are recognized by Crown governments and put into practice and operational kind of tactical plans, we can get into the real business, which is working together to keep it a really good place, as you've seen on the show. So it seems now, I don't know why, but it seems that we have to do this wrangling and negotiating and gasping for space in these kind of places, which is super grateful, of course. But really, government as crown governments, just honoring promises that were made over 100 years ago is I think, that where we would like to continue the discussion.
Yeah, that's great. There's some examples that are going really well, and there's some continuing challenges, and I'm familiar with some of the challenges like you describe in the provincial and federal government's response to IPCA Indigenous-led conservation initiatives. So thank you for sharing. And Patty, he talked a little bit about this notion of the coming together of traditional knowledge and science as a geometric expansion. I really, really like that concept. And you talked about two-eyed seeing, and we heard about the challenges in having the governments at all respond and understand traditional knowledge. Can you explain or describe some of your opportunities and challenges in that two-eyed seeing geometric expansion process, if you agree with that, or how you see it? Thanks.
For sure, and I think I just want to start by acknowledging, when we began this type of work, Indigenous-led conservation, we did learn a lot from our allies, from our partners like CPAWS. So CPAWS New Brunswick really provided us with some understanding, especially about issues like connectivity. And I really like that understanding of connectivity because of the fact that we are all connected. And therein lies, the purpose behind us needing to work together is that we are all connected. And we are not distinct or apart from that web of life that we continue to impact in a hurtful way, that it's as if somehow humans have seen themselves as exempt as a species from having to suffer or not understand the connection between inflicting harm on the web of life and what happens to our life. And what I've seen so many times is that our people, whether intentionally or not, when we're not a part of the conversation about conservation, it's as if, we do not have a place within that discussion. And to me, that is an assumption or a perception that is misguided, because as a wise friend of mine said, we have 14,000 years of a management plan, and we were doing quite well with that. And so obviously, with 14,000 years of expertise and knowledge, we might have something to bring to the conversation about how to turn this all around. And to be honest, frank with everyone, our elders, our ceremonial people, our knowledge keepers, they have held an inherent connection and understanding about our environment, which is not separate from us. We are place-based, we are ecosystem-based, we are the original caretakers, we are the original stewards. We have seen from studies that have been done that where indigenous linguistic diversity thrives, so does biodiversity. This is a reciprocity that the entire world needs to come to understand. And the only way that that is going to happen is if we recognize whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it two-eyed seeing, if you want to call it three-eyed seeing, which I've also heard, that we pay deference not only to science, to the Western knowledge system, we also pay deference to Indigenous knowledge, Indigenous expertise, Indigenous science. And I know for some reason, for a lot of people, this shift seems to be an insurmountable challenge. So that is why, to me, we try to ensure that when we share this information, it's not as if it's just a static slide on a screen, or that it's a dissertation. This has to be in balance with how we traditionally approach things, which is through invocation. You know, some people call what I did at the beginning an opening prayer, what have you. We call it an invocation, because that invocation provides that doorway through which all of the knowledge, the universal ancestral knowledge that we all carry, can come in and hopefully catch people's attention, catch your intuition, catch your emotion, catch your thoughts, so that you're connecting with what is being said in a way that you do not find anywhere else. And that's why it's so powerful what was shared about that canoe send-off, is because it's in keeping that balance between invocation, providing that opening for spirit, some call it, because whether we recognize it or not, you know, there is a spirit to the land, there is a spirit to the water, there is a spirit to all living things. And we really need to step back, put our egos in check, and realize, you know what, we're not that important in this grand scheme of things. That there are millions of species that we need to be speaking on behalf of, because this happens to be how we communicate with each other. There is also other ways that we communicate. So when we talk about two-eyed seeing, it's bringing that all in. It's bringing all of that to bear. Our language, our songs, our practices, our ceremonies, everything. Because literally that is what we need to keep our world together.
Thank you, Patty. That was so great. There's this understanding of traditional ecological knowledge, Indigenous values, which pervade our conversations, and indeed which have pervaded policy statements by Indigenous peoples for a long time. Indigenous peoples have been saying certain things for quite a long time. And we heard Matthew say, the settlers can share our land. And I know from my work in British Columbia in 1910, 3 of the nations, the Nkaplakamux, the Okanagan, and the Shuswap, came together and said, they sent a letter to Prime Minister Laurier in 1910 and said, we want to share this land 50-50 and help each other to be great and good. That's essentially a policy statement from 1910, which has been sort of on the books for all of that time. And now we're coming to a place where those policy statements are now being heard. And so, Wan Lee, what do you think about the opportunities and challenges in, or how do we ensure the long-term success of Indigenous protected areas while we respond and recognize those Indigenous policy statements given our current context, and how we ensure that those statements that came from all time immemorial and from 1910 and from these other things continue to inform this policy and move forward?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, first of all, I was going to say it's difficult to follow that after what Patty has said, so I apologize for disappointing ahead of time. Maybe just to, I'll preface my response with just talking a little bit about the work that we've been doing and where I'm sort of sourcing some of the recommendations from. In 2021, in December, the First Nations in Assembly passed a resolution on marine indigenous protected and conserved areas, and that really mandated the work of the AFN to secure a federal commitment to IPCAs, both on lands and waters. I talked a little bit about there being a gap in the marine and coastal environment. We're not seeing that same level of support. So that's what we've been pushing for. And in doing that, we put together a working group, as we all love to do, to guide the development of a paper on trying to, put together some recommendations to the Government of Canada as to how to advance this work. In doing that, we interviewed 13 individuals from NGOs, from First Nations, and also folks that have been involved either currently through this work or in their past through this work with Parks Canada, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, as well as Environment and Climate Change Canada. And through that process, was able to identify the constraints that were holding the work on marine IPCAs and why that has not been really sort of proliferated in the way that we've seen that on land. We came up with three main categories of constraints, and that being operational, funding and capacity, as well as policy and legislation. From those areas and themes of constraints, we then developed the recommendations that, some of which I will share with you on funding capacity, and also just trying to establish some sort of permanence in this kind of the work that folks are trying to do. I think there's a lot that had been learned from the first sort of round of Canada to Pathway to Target 1 approach, where there was a huge surge of funding that was provided to initiate the development of IPCAs. And there's definitely a benefit to that surge where folks were able to resource themselves and be able to start a lot of the work that needed to be done. But one of the things that was stressed was also that there were sort of projects that were ready-made IPCAs packaged ready to go, but then there needed to be a stream of capacity development funding as well for nations that may not be as ready and needed that kind of support. But I mean, I think in the long term, ensuring that sort of permanence required also, the need for long-term approaches, and we're seeing examples with PFPs like Project for Finance Permanence examples, but also what we also heard nations say is needing the ability to source their own OSRs, like operational source funding. I always have to pause and think about these acronyms and what are they? But being able to provide or charge permit fees and user fees in IPCAs as well to enable that sort of long-term approach. In terms of how we also then reflect, the approaches that each of these folks talked about around Indigenous knowledge and governance within these policies is really making sure that First Nations have a seat at the table and they are in partnership, not just inclusion, but in partnership in leading the process. We have legislation within Canada to implement the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the importance of self-determination being a key one, the governance of First Nations being fundamental to leading any sort of conservation work, as we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday as well. I think one of the last things that I'll say about governance as well, it's, Patty alluded to this, the IPBES report in 2019 was very clear in terms of saying that biodiversity thrives in areas where Indigenous peoples have control and governance over their lands, waters, and resources. So that's a key thing that we have to remember in thinking about how we shift the balance of power, as we approach some of these negotiations today. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one question from the audience. If there's one person who wants to ask a question to one of the panelists or to each of the panelists.
Hi, thank you so much for this incredible presentation. It's a perfect way to start the day. So I believe, Stephanie, you talked about the sort of step that we're always having to come to in terms of dealing with the colonial style structures for getting philanthropy. And Wanli, you just mentioned having a seat at the table. And I'd really like to hear more about what you think that table should actually look like and how you think we could sort of move towards demolishing that step to make it far easier and more accessible. And what can Western funders and philanthropists do to join you as opposed to you having to step up all the time? I think we need to shift that.
Were you asking me? Okay. Well, I can answer for myself, I guess. I think the precedent that was set for all of these proposals for this step, I think, needs to be reviewed, and I think it needs to be changed. I think that there needs to be better communication between funders and the communities on what the process should look like in terms of these deliverables and these reporting systems. And I think that there should be a new precedent set on how to work with that and make it like, I can't say that it needs to be the same across the board, because how one nation does something and makes decisions based on the Indigenous laws that govern them is different than another nation, and we're not all one people and one culture. I think that it needs to be looked at individually in terms of what region you're working with and how that region makes decisions and govern themselves. I think that having this one approach, this one step, and lumping us all together is a huge part of the problem. It's a huge part of the issues we face every day as unique individual people and nations. I think that we need to go over what this process needs to look like and make those decisions together collectively, as opposed to dictating to us how we need to fill out these forms and do these reports and answer to you for these funds that were apparently given to us to use for our communities to do this work. But meanwhile, we can't even buy office chairs, or we can't use these funds to support sensitivity training for our nations and to do this work on a human level. I think that we need to review how the funding dollars are set up for our communities, because there is a huge gap in the human work that we have to do to really uplift our communities that have this intergenerational trauma that we're coming to the table with. So not only are we trying to sort out this huge bag of trauma that were given to us, we also have to figure out this huge bag of funding requirements And as I said earlier, you need to have like a PhD almost to be able to sort through these documents and figure out how to make this work. You know, like I have a team of us that has to, like on our calendars and our work plans, have this set up so we have enough time to be able to go through everything and justify the funding that we received and spent on our communities. And if I can't justify it good enough, I have to pay it back. And this is so important work that has to happen. And in building the capacity of our young people and our youth to do this work so that I can take a step back and they're the ones that can run and continue this important work we're doing.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for the answer, and thank you very much for the question. I'll provide a summary now, and then there's a little bit of a surprise just after my short comments, and then we'll do the little surprise, so stay tuned for that momentarily, and then Patty will close us off again with closing. And so I just want to really thank the panelists for sharing the vision, for giving voice to those visions. It's so important that vision lead the way, that we're trying to get to where we want to get to. When we're thinking about in the context of COP, what we're trying to get to in preservation of biodiversity and nature-based solutions, in the protection of water and all of the animals and things that rely on water, it's really important to understand what gets us those results. What gets us those results is Indigenous management of territories. What doesn't get us those results is the monitoring of biodiversity, is the metrics reporting, is the writing of reports, is the analysis of data. That can support, certainly, the achievement of those results, but that's not what gets us the results we want. I think we need to be careful of the sort of a diversionary set of work that's related to scientific inquiry, scientific monitoring. The monitoring of biodiversity does not result in biodiversity protection. Indigenous-led management does, and I'm pretty sure that historically the results were achieved by Indigenous people living their lives in the way in accordance with traditional law, in accordance with values, and not so much about biodiversity monitoring. So I want to make that point, and that there's a whole range of opportunities to achieve those results, from the protection of intact watersheds, like you're so fortunate to be inspired by daily, to those that need restoration, that need a lot of help to recover, to reinstate those systems that we all depend on, those ecological support systems. All of those things need to be Indigenous-led, and they need to inform this Indigenous knowledge, this Indigenous values, Indigenous leadership leads to inform traditional knowledge and Indigenous knowledge-based policy definitions within the current Canadian legislative context. And so we're all working hard to achieve those things, and I just want to commend and thank you for all your work and for sharing with us your vision today. Thank you very much. And now, before we go to Patty's closing, you're invited to look under your seats for a sticker from the Seal River Watershed, and I think if you're the lucky recipient of the sticker, there's one. Please see Stephanie just right after this panel, and she'll share a gift with you. So thank you for that, Stephanie. And thank you, Patty, now for the closing.
I think I just dropped my mask.
Thank you.
Waliwan Gizio, Waliwan Gizio Lina, Waliwan Muslim Sinug, Waliwan Nokma Sinug. Thank you, grandmothers and grandfathers, for coming to be with us here today. Thank you for all the wonderful thoughts and feelings and ideas that were shared, along with the really good medicine that our young people have brought. And Waliwan, to all those that came to listen, and to hear and to witness how Indigenous-led conservation looks, and being a part of it. Waliwan, and safe travels for anybody traveling back home, and also prayers for all of your loved ones that are also a part of this, as you're being supported in the work that you do. I'm going to close with a song that's called the Mother Earth Song, And I won't do the full thing because it's quite a long song, but it's to honor our connection to Mother Earth. And yeah, Willie Wynn. Gachi Gao was it Gil Wow Yud. Gachi Gao was it Gil Wow Yud. Skit Gum Nick a dot me cook Sita Gil Wow Yud. Away, hey, ha. Away, hey, hey, hey. Away, hey, ha. Away, hey, hey. Silden oak with snook, gil wow you. Silden oak misnook, gil wow yud. Skit gummick a dot me cook, sita gil wow yud. Away, hey, ha. Away, hey, hey. Away, hey, ha. Away, hey. Willie Wynn.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Good to meet you. Good luck with everything.
Willie Wynn.
Everyone, if you can please help yourself to some breakfast that has been so generously provided, that would be amazing. And do please stay on for our next event at 11 o'clock. Thanks. Thank you, guys. That was amazing.